Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hoosier Garage. This is part 3 of the quarter panel debacle. Okay, this should be the last part of it. We got to weld all this in and then we'll smooth it out. That should be it. Okay, first I had forgotten, and I told you this in the last video, forgotten to drill the holes down through here. So I loosened up the screw and our panel bond is holding it here, but I can pull it out enough and just pop them holes in there, and then we will have our flange weld able to weld. So I'll show you more here in a second. We'll get this drilled out. Alright, now you just saw me drill these holes on here. Now, most cases when you drill a hole in a piece of sheet metal, on the back side of it, whatever steel was in that hole, it pushes it out and it sticks out the back, makes a sharp point, makes a raised edge when you're trying to push it back with something like this. So what I did was I raised it out a little bit and took this grinder and just kind of tickled the back side of it and took that point off of each one of those little holes. So now that it fits nice and flush up in there, and we shouldn't have anything where it bulges out because of the little burrs. So keep that in mind if you're doing something when it's on the panel like that, or even when it's off and you go to put it on. Make sure you clean that up. Alright, now we're ready to go. We're going to put the screws back in that panel on that driver's side, and I went ahead and set the welder up right here in the center behind the van. That way we can jump around and let that heat dissipate some. So we'll do a couple here, spread them out, and then we'll walk around to the other side and do the same thing over there. And this will allow us to, spread it out while continuing to be doing something. I'll also get the compressed air and we'll use that. Now I don't know, I've had it for years and years, but my little air wand, cannot find it. I must have laid it down somewhere or loaned it to somebody. Not sure, but we can use the tire valve in the meantime, and I can cool off that way. I'll also get a wet rag and have that as a backup. So we're gonna get started. You'll be able to see some of it. Okay, so I've spent a few hours or more just going through and methodically welding everything up. Doing all the little plug welds on each side of the van, this side on the top, that side on the top, and then I proceeded to go down the sides with things. Right here is one of them. just gradually stitching this butt weld back together. Do several inches apart the first few, do some other things, come back through, do it again. And I have no warpage. If I have any warpage here, it's very slightly, maybe somewhere in there, it's very slight give. Sometimes you can put a towel or like a paper towel on your hand and run it through there, and it will amplify the feeling. So I think there's just a little bit here, but it's so gradual that it's nothing that a skim coat of filler can't take care of. And we're not done yet. We'll go through and tack these up a little bit more, and sometimes it'll move it around back into the spot. But so far, this is much better than the last time. This pinch weld here, where you have to get it from the backside here, that was a little bit of a challenge. Had to clamp together. The gap was kind of opened up down here, but I was able to get that, and it's quite workable now. It's all tacked into place. It does need some finish welds for the spot welding, but that's pretty good. Let me show you the other side. This side is very similar. It has some of its own challenges. We don't have any warping in here that I feel at all, really. So if there's a better side, as far as that, it'd be this side. Some of our challenges, and not even in this lap weld, this one has actually worked out really nice. This one is like perfect. So I've got that spotted. Right here, and I don't know what it is exactly because we have a factory shape that goes in the wheel well there, and I rebuilt that, but it was based on what was there. This panel kind of dips in where these welds are, and this one dipped in. I had to actually pull it out to where it was within 1/8 of an inch of being flat, like if you ran a straight edge across here, and then I welded it here temporarily. So when I work this corner around, I'll have to try to work it into place, and then I'll probably spot weld it to the wheel well behind it. It's not spot welded there yet. That'll probably help. But this whole intersection of all these shapes is a little difficult. Right here, I'll have to probably take a file and work this edge down here so that it will fit in flush with this piece here, because it's stepping out right now. Otherwise, as ugly as it looks, it's very smooth and it fits into place just so that. Right here, same thing. The body line is not as pronounced as it was on the original part. So I'll probably have to make a little relief cut, maybe about 1.5 inches, and then you can get in the backside and push it into this position, and then weld it, and then it'll gradually kind of float into this line here. Over here, I have it welded here, here, and on the inside right here. That's where I stopped though for the night. Right here, this cab corner is out a little bit, and I did spot weld that the other day to get a more firm placement on it, but I have a little bit of a gap in there, I've noticed. This goes in, that's as far as that'll go, and this is out about 1/8 of an inch, and right up here it's out just a little bit more than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this weld probably tomorrow, and then that'll allow me to push it back in, and then I'll re-weld it. So it's just a matter of placement, and then when I do that, I can start welding all this back together too, because it's gapped out, and I think if you break this loose, it'll let it go 2 different directions that are in and then together. So a lot of work, but I'm very satisfied with it. We're almost done with this, and I feel pretty good about it. So let's just see what else we can get done here. Okay, we're on day 4,328 of the quarter panel project. Okay, and ran out of wire last night, so I went and got some new wire today. And some of you have asked what kind of gas and this, that, and the other I'm using. I have not used gas up to this point with this welder. It does have the provisions and connection point for it, and it comes with the hose and the meter and all that stuff, but I have not used it yet. I plan to in the future, but right now I'm using gasless flux core wire. And I'll give you a little tip on this stuff. If you get a Hobart or Lincoln or if Miller has this size, I never see Miller in this size, but if you get a Lincoln or Hobart, those are good wires to get if you're running a gasless flux core. This is .030. I have used .035. If you use gas, you can go down to like 0.24. It's a lot smaller wire and not as much heat, so that's why you got to spread all this stuff out. So I probably should be using it, but this gets by if you just take your time. I can say that. And I went ahead and got me some new tips. I only had one tip left. Try to not be lazy and use the tips that are made for the wire. So this is 030 wire and 030 tips. Just a little bit of, if you buy this and cheap stuff, it might get you by, but even this stuff you'll have trouble sometimes just on the atmosphere. So keep that in mind. Good name brand stuff on the wire and you'll be all right. Anyways, so I'm going to go through this a little bit more. This side is pretty much in shape. I had did a little relief cut here and moved some things around, and I have almost everything stitched up there. I'm going to come up here and probably not completely cover the lap weld, but I have it, you know, besides our little dots that we filled in, I have along the lap itself. I'm not going to go 100%. I'll probably go about 95% on it and then buzz it down. We've got some new wheels too, so we can do that. Over here, we're in pretty good shape. We're just going to get all our spot welds, plug welds in the flange where they come together like a sandwich. And on the other side, we got a few, pretty much the same thing in a few other little spots that we're going to have to work around. So we're getting there, and you hopefully see at least the buzz down product of it very shortly. We're going to take a look at what it needs on this side, and I already handled one of the issues, and that one is this little piece right here where it's all I'm rubbing off there. It was a corner that was poked out. Well, I took a file and filed it a little bit because it was really tight with this piece kind of setting on top of it. So what I did was file it just enough, and I was able to push it in, tack it here, and then it all kind of streamlined back together. There'll probably be a little bit of filler in this area just to kind of even everything out, but we have a really good transition both ways, so I think that'll work out good. We'll continue butt welding this section here, as just mentioned, all the way around to here. We'll do a relief cut, bring that in, and then make it more streamlined with this wheel arc where it comes down and just stops there, because that's 1/8 of an inch out, and we're going to blend it in here. Now, in an attempt to keep this fairly interesting, I've decided this side needs buzz down. Okay, so we're going to go forward with that, but look how ugly it looks. That is an ugly situation, but you know, right at this point, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how ugly it is. It's how good it will look. So you'll see that in a second. All right, so if you feel like you need a little tutorial on grinding something like this down after you're done, maybe this will help you out. One, I'm not using a hard wheel. I'm using a sanding disc, floppy disc. Almost sounds like a computer term. Flappy wheel, whatever you want to call it. Basically, just sandpaper on a grinding wheel. I started down here, and you don't want to go for the gold right off the bat. You just want to kind of skate down through here and work it down almost in layers. If you try to spend all your time down here doing it at once, you're going to get that heat in the panel, and we'll have that warpage that we would have had if we wasn't doing it right welding like we did the first time, right? So you just kind of come down through here and knock it down a little bit, and I stopped it about here so I can turn this thing on, and you can watch the rest here. Now, one thing I had yesterday when I was getting towards the end of my wire, I don't know if that had anything to do with it or if it was the air or what, or the welder, but I was getting some cold welds, and when you get cold welds, they don't want to penetrate into the surface that well. They want to kind of ball up, and then they'll stand way out. So even when you hit those, you might hit them just a little harder for a second, but then keep moving. So I'll let it cool down a little bit, and then we'll go back through it again. Now, obviously not finished. We have come a long way from just a second ago when you saw all the roughage from the welding. But I continue that method of just skating down through here 2 or 3 times. And then when I get about the third time, we started achieving something of a surface level. And then you had the little knots from each of the welds. That's when you can go ahead and just kind of work it out a little bit. And then go like a foot or so and work another one. Almost like you're welding, where you just jump a little bit. And I just gradually did that until we have this. Now if I take a little bit of a straight edge, this is just a little stir stick, paint can, whatever. And, okay, you'll see any difference. You probably see a shadow in there. Now, since we're close to this body line, you gotta watch, because see, it opens up there. So you gotta make sure you're up. We can come off of it about 1/4 of an inch. Roll it down through here. If it catches, that'll tell you there's a high spot. But most of all, you see kind of a low area, if anything. See, it's catching right there. So we'll hit that real quick. Catching right next to it. This little spot right here. Let's remember that it's right over the wheel. When you get down here to the end, the little catch right there might just be a burr. And then we'll clean this up just a little bit. So we have that one little spot there. We'll hit it real quick. It was this one right here. And there's a little bit of paint from the black here underneath it, so that tells you it wasn't all the way flat. I held it on there just long enough to where you wouldn't get any heat buildup. So we're pretty good there. So just looking at it this way, and one thing I did do after I worked it down, you can see where I just took it and just zzz through there. You can see where I just took it and just zzz through there and just zzz through there and kind of did it through here. And it really cleans up the effect of it. It gives you a little bit of personal satisfaction looking at it that way. I hit this maybe 2 times here, and they're so much more consistent that you could probably keep doing that method maybe 7 or 8 times, and then you'll really start achieving a flatness. Then you can kind of work down specific areas, one area at a time. So Now, as far as the driver's side, we are going to call this part of the project done. Like I said, the mudding needs to be done, all that sort of thing. But we're nice and smooth on here. See, bare hand, I don't have any risk of stabbing myself with a sharp piece of metal because I'm confident that I did it right, okay? So, now down here, same deal. Same deal. Now, in our patch panels series, I think I have one part out. In the second part, we'll probably make the little piece that completes this. It'll come down to the seam here, wrap around a little bit. Real easy little piece, nothing too involved there. And look really good here. I'm really happy with this. Very minimal warpage. And if you do see anything, maybe right about there, just a slight. And I think what that is where the post is, where we put our panel bond on, and it's kind of sucking it in a little bit. Feels good to get this close to it. I mean, you know, all the work that we've been doing in this for the past, I guess you could say, 5 months now. Alright, so we was talking about this little spot where this protrudes out further than the new panel does. And you can see the little darkness, the gap there. I made a relief cut this way, about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch below the body line. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is get on the inside of the van, and I've just got a hammer in case I need it, but I'm going to try to push it out just carefully with this old screwdriver, this old flathead. So let's see what we can do with that. So that puts it right flush with it there, and almost here. I'm just going to push this out just a touch on the very tip of the corner here where I made that cut. I pushed just a little bit extra, which will allow me to come over here and correct it. So now we're pretty flush. Now you might think, well, won't you'll see a transition where it's very sharp here and then it kind of dulls down? You might a little bit, but if we are, I guess you could say, aware of it as we're doing our body work, we might be able to add a little bit of filler. Not a lot. You don't want to use very much if you can help it. Just enough, and then taper it off, and then it just turns into a blend. But this might even do it. We'll see once we get some welding done on it and we smooth that down. Alright, if you remember, I was talking about this panel right here, and I had to bust this weld back out that I put in here the other day. And that was on affected this panel was not squaring up with this one very well. And now it's in pretty good shape. So I busted that loose, got some clamps in here, and of course these two, they go in like that and they squeeze together. So I was able to kind of strong arm them a little bit, get the clamps in there, close this gap up pretty good. This is the only spot I really don't care for a whole lot, where you can see that catches on it, but it's only so much I can do with that. The panel is glued in under here, and then we push this in a little bit to get it to be not as bad. It's off maybe a 1/16 of an inch from where it should be, but once it gets back up here we're straight, and down here we're good. You could always do the relief cut, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm gonna let it go. I'll re-weld this back in, and then we've got all these over here welded in, and we have a slight bit of sinkage right here where it kind of drew inward, but I'm not real worried about that. We got the butt weld all established, and this butt weld down here as well as this one. The only thing I got to do now is I went ahead and cut this out. It goes into the cut, and then I trimmed a little bit of the curve out to where you could squeeze it back together and then re-weld it. So we should have a pretty good line there. So I'll get this welded up, and I think we should be ready to smooth this down, and we'll almost be done with this part of the project. So some of the ways I'll probably attack filling all this in, and when I say fill it in, just the little notches and gaps and low places where I didn't completely weld it through. It's so thin. A lot of people would just put body filler over it, but there is a little step I do like to take when it comes to stuff like that, and that's take like a short strand fiberglass. Now, you might be familiar with the long strand where it's real hairy looking. If you get the short strand, it has a consistency of body filler Bondo, but it's much more solid and much more rigid. So you could put it down here and deal with the overall seam, particularly on the other side when you have this body line where you can build that back up. It's much harder, and you can put it on just a little thicker than body filler or Bondo. Because if you get over 1/8 of an inch with Bondo, that's where you really start risking cracking and the stuff that you see typically on old cars that have been repaired. You see it lifting off in big sheets and chunks, and that ain't gonna work. So you use a short strand fiberglass, and I've kind of proven myself on it because I've done a hood scoop on a Challenger I had back in 2007. Fiberglass hood scoop on a steel hood, and we reinforced it and put screws in the bottom of it to hold the fiberglass in, and then we bonded it smoothly so we wouldn't have a seam to the steel hood. Last I know, which was probably this past summer, it's still intact. The paint looks great on it, so I felt pretty good about that, and I don't feel one bit hesitant about doing it on here. And if you do it right, I don't think you should either. So that's just some other things we're gonna handle, but we're gonna get out of here and drop this video right now. If you like what you see, you know the drill. Hit subscribe right down here, and in the screen, it's right down here in the lower right-hand corner. Subscribe, or you just go below the screen. Subscribe. There's so many places you can subscribe. It's crazy. Just give us a like on Facebook too. We're also on Instagram. Just check us out and tell all your friends about us. So we're gonna jump off here. Y'all have a great day, night, evening, morning, whatever you're doing.